Hello, my name is Chris Smith, a normal chap from the fabulously crappy state of West Virginia. Those that frequent various chat rooms and forums would know me as Reese Kane, a broadcaster to Twitch TV who usually bores people to sleep with my playthroughs of classic games from the 80s and 90s. I'm here today to address the Tropes in Gaming Damsels in Distress series by Miss Anita Sarkeesian. Now, up to now, I've sat back and watched everything unfold with the ungodly hazing of this woman to, of all things, death threats? Really? As a man, I could just point and scoff at this woman for the idea of wanting to take away our video games, as the rabble out there were claiming, but nothing could be further than the truth. All Anita wanted to do was point out how females can be better represented in gaming. I can't really call myself a feminist because I'm a man. All I can do is just be cool and keep it in my pants. I've also been kind of a prude in the sense that I do believe women look better with their clothes on. And any chance where I could play a game as a female, I will. Solely for a change of pace, like, say, Saints Row or Fable 2, the Fallout games. I love those. The list could go on and on. Mostly as protagonists. Sadly, it's mostly marketing that continues to perpetuate the notion that women were weak enough to be captured by a villain. It's just a matter of money. Even though the rating on the boxes may have a big M on the front, the stories and elements are still very juvenile, and it shows in the people who somehow get to play them, namely kids. There's a reason for the stigma of boys being the only ones who want to play Grand Theft Auto. There's a reason it exists for that it exists. My only question to Miss Sarkeesian is this: what do you expect to happen? I mean, let's say for the sake of argument that Americans eventually come to the realization that, yeah, there is sexism in gaming that doesn't at all respect one half of the human race. I believe it. But what then? Do we boycott all gaming until the publishers and developers change their ways or go bankrupt? Do we shame them? Do we follow Bane's idea in The Dark Knight Rises and have executives dragged out into the streets? There is a growing surge of AAA games made exclusively to the United States crowd. But if Sony and Microsoft notices that their first-party games dropping to unprofitable levels, they could just end their gaming divisions entirely. Remember, those two companies aren't even game companies. Sony's doing just fine with their TVs, their Blu-ray technology, their stereos, and their movie division. And Microsoft is doing just fine with the Windows Phone OS, Microsoft Office, MSNBC, and despite the bad press, even Windows 8. They don't need gamers to make obscene profits. Also, keep in mind that the number one gaming company, Nintendo, is based in Japan. And all of the hit games still come from there, and they seem to be doing just fine despite many of their games and features either meant for Japanese consumers or just flat out don't get released here in the States. Take the 3DS for example. You have this nice feature called Street Pass where you just take your DS with you, and if you happen to come across someone who has a DS, hey, they talk to each other. Name any place in Middle America where this is really useful. It's really meant for Japanese subways and buses where everybody commutes to work. At least there, you're bound to meet at least 100 people, and you'll get like 100 hits on your 3DS. We don't have that here in the States, at least not in Middle America where I live. I may get lucky and end up meeting one person when I'm going to Walmart or a grocery store or any place in general. But it's just not meant for here in the States. It took a fan campaign to bring 3 of Japan's greatest RPGs to the English folk. And none of those games included Mother 3. Nintendo simply will not budge. I will admit this is disturbing, But it is my belief that Nintendo, when it comes to their successes and the culture it's based on what goes into their works, they don't need us. They really don't need us at all. If they wanted to, Nintendo, just to spite us, like they have in the past, they could cease all English porting of their first-party games, making the Wii U and the 3DS the first console and handheld ever to be powered entirely by third-party games. Or in a worst-case scenario, Nintendo could just pull out of the States completely. No more Mario, no more Zelda, no more Metroid, no more Star Fox, and for the kids, no more Pokemon. And us humans, being a rather primitive lot, we as a whole will want to point fingers. You can pretty much guess what will happen next. Best case scenario, they could just point and laugh at the silly American girl who supposedly doesn't like anything and wants to ruin everybody's fun, but is failing at it. After all, it is Japan, and I doubt a campaign against misogyny will even register a blip in their culture. I mean, for fuck's sake, there is a DS game that requires you to touch various parts of a 14-year-old girl just to see if she's a witch. Just touch. Touch, 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 touch. You couldn't get away with that here in the States with adult women, let alone 14-year-old girls. There's also a coin-op that requires you to jam a finger into a plastic ass. I'm sorry, Anita, you would have just as much luck trying to start a women's movement in Saudi Arabia. Now, for the record, I have no insight on Nintendo's business model. I have no clue what goes on behind closed doors. There's no hint that what I just said will ever happen. However, I do know that Nintendo has withheld a lot of their hardware and software from nations outside of Japan without any distinct reason. I see no reason that the previous nightmare scenario could not happen. For example, there was the Super NES remake to The Legend of Zelda NES game that had all new maps, additional gaming mechanics, and even had the option to play as either a boy or a girl. The very first-party Nintendo game where the girl can save the princess, and it was never released outside of Japan. Worst of all, it was only available on the broadcast Satellaview network, which eventually ended its 5-year run in the summer of 2000. It was barely mentioned in printed media here in the States, and no one considered porting it here. I don't know why. I played it earlier this year. It was fun. You can catch the highlight on Twitch TV, by the way. There was also the Mother series that only got the second game, Earthbound, brought here to the States, leaving the audience clamoring for more! And Nintendo going, no. Now, as for the Last Princess idea, I'll buy it. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if a publisher buys the IP just to shelve it. So here's an idea from Ms. Sarkeesian, and she's welcome to take and run with it. I'll just be happy that I contributed to society somehow. Oprah Winfrey has a vast network that includes television, movies, printed media, books, and even radio. She doesn't have her own publishing arm of the gaming industry, however. You can see where I'm going with this, right? You could change that. She has more than enough money to help fund a AAA title that could help buck the trend and offer a unique presentation to the medium. It all depends on 3 things. 1, is the story engaging? 2, are the controls tight and responsive? And 3rd, and most of all, is it fun enough to play again and again? Now, for example, there are these 3 Xbox games. This is just recent examples. These could have just been rentals. Some of them are rentals. But some of them do stick out to where we keep playing them over and over. One of them, of course, probably because we're masochists. But I'll get to that in due time. We have Ghostbusters. It's an awesome game where you you play as a fifth Ghostbuster, and you could just sit back and watch the story unfold. I mean, you don't necessarily have to play the game. You could just tag along with the Ghostbusters and occasionally fire your proton pack. Of course, that's on easy mode. When you start playing professional mode and all that, you have to get involved, but that's beside the point. It's a fun game, even though it could just very well be a rental. You could play it and beat it in about 8 to 10 hours tops. There's also Eat Lead, which parodies the gaming industry as a whole. It's not necessarily a game where you rescue the girl, but there is a girl that's in there who will offer mission updates and keep you posted on what the hell is going on outside of your environment. But all in all, it was just a joke, and it could very well be a rental. I don't know if it's really got that much of a cult following. Now here is a definite rental that is also a AAA title. I'm sure gamers would love to forget about this game, Bionic Commando. Have yet to get very far in the first act. I'm playing on professional mode, by the way. Now, you could go for the extended role-playing game approach and just make an RPG like Fallout. It's an idea. Now, all of these, you could take and run with them or come up with your own idea. It's not necessarily my call, but if you want to run with it, just make sure that it's fun to play. If it's fun to play, I'll buy it. I'll buy it and play the hell out of it. Probably on my channel, Twitch TV. But please think about what I just said. Hold for edit. We know that there is sexism in games. I guess the people are mostly just scared that it's either this or nothing. A good chunk of us do not know how to program a hello world, let alone a video game. So we can't really do any better than what the publishers are churning out. Plus, a lot of us can't even write a decent fanfic, let alone an involving story that will pull people in. So we have to rely on developers and publishers who obviously get involved and start nitpicking and putting things in that will ruin the core idea of a game, but developers don't really get to pick and choose what they get to make. They're usually just slapped with a deadline and a couple $1 million, maybe hundreds of millions if it's a AAA game. It's all about money. How much and who's pulling the strings, who's got the money, and will you get that money at the end? And if the executives say that the woman's got to be weak and useless, that's what's going to happen. You have to be the one to change that. It's just a matter of, will it benefit all of us? If you can accomplish this, I will applaud you. I guess until that happens, I'll just sit and watch and wait. As I always have. As I always will. This is Chris Smith, Reese Kane, signing out. See you on Twitch.